Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect as always. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. Welcome back from the Easter weekend, the Easter holidays. Allow me set this up and test our audio before we get it all started, as I also wait for you guys to join today's morning broadcast. Um, and I do hope that you're all in good spirit. Uh, well over from that Easter weekend. It's been a beautiful period for us who do follow the game of sport. Those of us that do follow, football. Uh, quite quite brilliant, I must say. Quite interesting how things did transpire during the course of the weekend, especially for those with teams that are vying for a top five finish as far as the Premier League is concerned, with respect to earning themselves a slot to next season is a UEFA Champions League. So, anyways, like I said, we're going to be talking Manchester United with the latest transfer speculation that does involve Matheus Cunha, who will be speaking at Tottenham Hotspurs in their 2-1 loss against Nottingham Forest. Again, Nottingham Forest, one of those teams trying to pursue a top five place finish. A team that last season was battling relegation, and yet here we are this season. They are vying for one of those top slots. Kinda reminds me, I think the season of was it 2014, 2015 when Leicester City were battling relegation, and then there they were. I think having to bring in a Nigel Pearson to save them from relegation. Then Claudio Ranieri comes in. I think the subsequent season, I think around that period, and then they were champions. That team that had the likes of N'Golo Kante, the likes of Morgan, the likes of Riyad Mahrez, Okazaki, Jamie Vardy, Danny Drinking Water in that midfield. So that Leicester City side. But like I said, our focus will be on those things, but also maybe slightly on Anthony, because he was once again on the score sheet as his side Real Betis beat up against Girona by 3-1 in a very interesting game. Isiko Alcaron, one of those on target. So we'll be speaking all those matters and much more. So as I do wait for you guys to join the broadcast so that we can get it all started. Yes, do join me this morning as we speak everything sport. We are slightly late or a little late from our usual time. Usually, I want us to do this thing between 10 a.m. and 11 so that I can let you guys go to work. But welcome to yet another live broadcast from Football Tribe UG. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. And yes, let's kick things off with Manchester United, because the Red Devils, despite everything that is going wrong for them in the Premier League, following that 1-0 loss to Wolverhampton Wanderers over the weekend, pretty much a result that saying that they are now in the to start blustering their squad. We have already spoken before on this same broadcast of how many things they need to do to try and set up Ruben Amorim, the proper team that he may desire to make Manchester United competitive. Okay, and we saw at least a glimpse of that in January when they signed a player like Patrick Togg to give signs that they are willing to back the manager, that is Ruben Amorim. And of course, it's been a bad season as far as the Premier League is concerned. I think they've recorded as many as 15 Premier League losses, arguably their worst campaign, or if in recent times or in memory, especially for the millennials. I stand to be corrected, but for as far as I can remember, this could go down as their worst season ever, as far as some of us are concerned, because it doesn't really look pretty. It doesn't really look pretty from where they are standing. They are 14th on the Premier League table, And when you look at the scope of things, I think they've lost what? As many as 15 games. That's not synonymous with a team like Manchester United. But so over the weekend, they fell to that free kick goal by Pablo Sarabia as they lost by a goal to nil to Wolverhampton Wanderers at Old Trafford. Now, they've gone to Wolves and they are starting to raid Wolverhampton Wanderers to perhaps start and destabilize Vita Pereira's side. Of course, Vita Pereira, the new manager at Wolverhampton Wanderers, who did succeed Gary O'Neill when he was sacked. So they are there to try and persuade Matheus Cunha to join them this summer. Now, this is a player on whom they've already expressed serious interest that dates as far back as the January transfer window, a period during which Nottingham Forest were leading the rest in wanting to sign the Brazilian international. But Arsenal were also in that conversation, and with Andre Beta joining Arsenal as their new sporting director, formerly at Atletico Madrid, where Matheus Cunha once played some of his football. It's only prudent that Arsenal do remain in this conversation because of that historical background between Arsenal sporting director and the player in Matheus Cunha. But the expectation, of course, is that I think the early. I can't stand here and say that the early bird will eat the one, because we all know how things do go down when it comes to transfers. Until it's done, it's never really done. You can expect twists and turns here and there to happen, because until a player raises that jersey and says, you know, I've put pen to paper, I've joined this club, we can never say never, because historically we've seen players like Willian Borges da Silva do medicals at Tottenham Hotspurs and end up at Chelsea. We've seen players on the verge of joining Arsenal in one Manuel Mata in 2011 and end up at Chelsea. We've seen players like Mikel Obi, that's John Mikel Obi, destined for Manchester United, and they ended up at Chelsea. I mean, so again, in recent memory, we've heard of players like Mikhailo Modric, with all the links that he had linking him with the Muku Arsenal, of how Arsenal were in the lead to sign him, and then eventually ended up at at Chelsea. Never mind that it has not really worked out well for him, but again, it remains really brilliant to see or to watch when it comes to transfer speculation. So, according to Fabrizio Romano, Manchester United are leading the race to sign the Brazilian international, whose release clause is said to be in the region of £62.5 million. Of course, he did put pen to paper to a new contract during that heavy speculation leading away from the club in January, and he said in the aftermath of signing that contract that he wanted to help Wolverhampton Wanderers avoid relegation. He didn't want to hang them out to dry at the time when he thought they needed him the most, and indeed they needed him the most during that spell in January, or during that spell when they needed to fight and stay up in the league. Of course, at that time, they had just sacked Gary O'Neill, like I said, and replaced him with Vita Pereira, who has done wonders, and really he's managed to keep them up. And so he says, and this is according to Fabrizio Romano's statement, he says, Manchester United are leading the rest to sign Matheus Cunha for Wolves as negotiations are ongoing. Personal terms are going to be discussed, as Manchester United are aware of more clubs keen. Plus, I think when he speaks of more clubs keen, that's where Arsenal do come in the conversation. That's where Nottingham Forest come in the conversation. Teams like Chelsea and other suitors. I do know there is interest from Saudi Pro League clubs, and more of that. So it does say plus 62.5 million release clause available. Good feeling after initial contacts between Cunha and Matheus and Manchester United. So maybe I'll use this moment to explain to you how transfers really work, or typically how oftentimes they play out. For example, you're Manchester United, you're interested in Matheus Cunha. Now, before Manchester United make formal contact with Wolverhampton Wanderers, they'll sort of dip their toe in the waters and test whether, one, the player would be of interest in joining their club. Two, whether the club is of, sorry, whether the player is in any form of interest in leaving the current club. So those are the two things they test first. Is the player interested in leaving the current club? Two, would they be interested in joining a club that, fancies him, and that kind of thing. So, and usually that's why player pursuits begin on the player side, and that's with their agents. For example, let's say you Danny Ashworth. I do not know who is leading Manchester United transfers at the moment, but of course Danny Ashworth left Manchester United. Okay, let's speak in the context of Arsenal, where we do know it's Andre Beta. So, for example, if you're Andre Beta, you'd go to speak to Matheus Cunha's agent and say, we do have interest in Matheus Cunha. Do you think he's willing to leave Wolverhampton Wanderers this window? And if he's willing, would he be open to joining us? And then if the agent will speak to his player, and if there's a sense that he's open for those kinds of options, then they would start making an offer. How about, we know that between us and the club, it's going to cost that. And if there is no release clause, that is when the club again probes to the agent, how much do you think it will cost us to, take him out of that club? At that moment, they're just probing. And then the agent will respond maybe 50, 60 million euros, that kind of thing. And on personal terms, what kind of wages is he looking to get? Our offer would be in the region of 150,000 pounds per week, or 180, and that kind of thing. And then they sort of go back and forth. And for whatever Manchester United or Arsenal would be in that conversation, in the form of interest points, is what then would give them the green light or the go ahead to go and then move at club level to say, we are interested in signing a player in Matheus Cunha. What will it take for us to sign the player? And then, of course, the other club will set their price. If there's no release clause to be paid, then that is when they will make their demands that we want 80 million pounds for Matheus Cunha. Then if it is a negotiable fee, then they go back and forth. We're willing to pay 50 million pounds. That's too little. Make it, 78. And then United comes back with another offer of 60, maybe 2 million pounds, and Wolves insist, okay, we're ready to listen, but that's still below demand. Make it 75 million pounds or 72 million pounds, and then United would say, okay, we'll pay you 60 million pounds in cash. Okay, not in cash, but in full sign-on fees, our transfer fees, and then plus 8 million pounds in add-ons or achievable add-ons. For example, if a player plays for us maybe 50 games, having started maybe 50% of those, then we'll pay you an extra 2 million pounds. If he helps us win the Premier League, maybe we'll pay you 3 million pounds. If we win any domestic cup with a player, maybe we'll pay you 1.5 million pounds. And that kind of structure. So clubs do go back and forth with that, in that sense, or with that respect. So that's the genesis of all the conversation in regards to Manchester United, as well as that transfer of Matheus Cunha that has been, big in speculation since January. But we'll wait to see how it does all play out. Still speaking transfers briefly, this has nothing to do with Matheus Cunha or Manchester United, but Real Madrid seem to, hold ready to be really hell-bent on appointing that is Xabi Alonso as their next manager, in the wake of speculation that Carlo Ancelotti will be leaving the club. Of course, Bayer Leverkusen would rather keep a hold of their manager, but it is what it is. But their CEO, Carlo, said Xabi Alonso's future has to be decided in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We have a very good relationship with Real Madrid. So he was speaking in respect to speculation linking with the former Madrid and Liverpool midfielder, as well as Bayern Munich, with a move to Santiago Bernabeu. But formally, this is where it all began, because Fabrizio Romano said Xabi Alonso remains top priority for Real Madrid to replace Ancelotti or Carlo Ancelotti. Plan clear for months, still waiting for formal steps. Leverkusen will not stand in Xabi's way. They are aware of his desire to join Real Madrid since he turned down Premier League clubs and Bayern Munich approaches to stay 1 year ago. And then that's when Bayer Leverkusen CEO Carlo, Celo confirms that we have a gentleman's agreement with Xabi Alonso for his exit. If a team in which Xabi Alonso has played comes, we would sit down to talk and we would not prevent him. I think this is a bit exaggerated to say with the team we played with. Bayern Munich came and he turned them down. Liverpool came, he turned them down. Although as informal as you may want to regard those conversations, well, they did happen. And then he adds on that Xabi Alonso's future has to be decided in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Remember, when we first got wind of Carlo Ancelotti's imminent departure,